Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector. So I took a box of PlayStation 4 games along with my PlayStation 4 and I took it to one of my mom and pop shops to see if I could trade or sell them. Now, the money they were offering me for the games just did not make any sense at all. I didn't make it didn't make sense to me. So I opted to go for the store credit so that I could trade and, get at least a little bit more value for those games. Now, I do have another pretty large box of games that I'm taking to another mom and pop shop, hopefully later on this afternoon. And hopefully I'll be able to uh, trade that in and get a little bit more value for that box. That box is going to be made up of more of like PlayStation 2, original Xbox, and some GameCube games. So we'll see what I can get for that. But I showed you guys this morning what all was in the PlayStation 4 box, and you guys can let me know what you think. 9 times out of 10, I'm really just trying to get at least 50, to 60% trade-in credit from a mom and pop shop. I'm not really expecting more than that because I know they typically lowball. But when it comes to the PlayStation 4, it's a little bit different because it's very hard to sell PlayStation 4 games, even right now. Like, I know a lot of times people say, well, dude, why don't you just put it online and sell it yourself online? Well, honestly, even if I did decide to sell a lot of these games or a lot of those games online, I'd probably have to mark them down significantly from whatever their price charting values would be just to be competitive. And then once you factor in shipping, seller fees and all that stuff, I'm right around the 65 to 60% anyway. So it just made more sense for me to do one clean sweep, take them all to the mom and pop shop and just get them out of my hair. And again, that's specific to PlayStation 4 because it's very difficult with PlayStation 4. I did have like 3 big box Switch special edition games, but in today's market, special edition Switch games are also very hard to sell just because it's not something that your average collector is looking for. So with all that being said, I'm going to show you what I picked up, and I got some really good titles added back into the collection. So we're going to start off with Rascal for the PlayStation 1. This is a very cool looking adventure game. I actually had this in my original PlayStation collection and sold it as a part of a bundle when I sold off all my PlayStation 1 games. So this is actually interesting and fun to get back in the collection. Not an expensive game at all. This is a $9 game. At the store that I went to, they had a buy 3, get 1 free, and the free game had to be under $10. So this was my free game that I picked up from that store. The next game that I picked up was this copy of Wild Number 9. Now, this is a very fun game. This is like a side-scrolling platforming style game on the PlayStation 1. It follows this like 1.5D format with this very interesting art style that you see here. Very, very interesting stuff. This is a cool game. I had this game in my collection a while back and sold it, and I've been meaning to get it back. This one isn't in the best condition, but I should be able to find a new case and do a case swap to get it back up to snuff. So this was another one that I picked up, Wild Number 9 for the PlayStation 1. And then the next game that we had in the bundle here that I picked up, this also was not an expensive game by any means, and that is C12. This copy is actually in really good condition. It has the manual, all of the inserts and everything. But C12 Final Resistance is a kind of like an isometric 3D run and gun style game. It's like a run and gun shooter. This game and One were 2 games that I had in my PlayStation 1 collection as well. I almost picked up One, but I opted to go with C12 just because I think I prefer the graphics on C12 a little bit more. And C12 also has a little bit more of like an open world kind of feel, whereas the One feels like just like not a rail shooter, but like almost like a side scroller kind of shooter. So this game just felt a little more dynamic. So I picked up C12 or CO12. No, I think it's C12. So that game was added there. And then the last game that I picked up in terms of just like the games that were part of the buy 3 get 1 free was Scalar on the PlayStation 2. This is actually a very interesting and kind of not so talked about 3D platforming game for the PlayStation 2. It came out on the PlayStation 2, the GameCube, and I think it also came out on the Xbox. So it's not exclusive to the PS2 or anything like that, but a very interesting and colorful game, one that I'm glad to add back as well. So Yeah, you don't necessarily need to have, not everything in the collection has to be super expensive. You know, I hear the conversation around retro gaming is always that it's really expensive. It doesn't have to be though. Here are 4 games that are, none of these games are over 15 bucks. They're all, well, maybe Wild Number 9 is maybe about 18 bucks, but these are all games that are under 20 bucks. Most of them are around 9 to 10 bucks. And you know, you can actually add these into a collection and start a collection of really solid retro games that don't break the bank. So I was glad to find these. I wasn't just going grail hunting, but these were some cool ones to add back. So that starts off the pickups. Then we got to get into some of the more heavy duty pickups because I did have a good amount of trade credit that I needed to burn. And so I burnt the trade credit on those games and then these that you'll see here. The first game is a Game Boy Color game actually, and this is Mega Man Extreme 2. So I don't think a lot of people realize that there were Mega Man X games on the Game Boy. They were just called Mega Man Extreme. So you have Mega Man Extreme and Mega Man Extreme 2. They had a copy of Mega Man Extreme 2, so I went ahead and snagged this one up for the Game Boy Color. There was a point where I was really tempted to get Mega Man Extreme 1 and 2, just getting them off eBay, but I knew I'd eventually run into them. And so I was stoked when I ran into this copy and popped it in. It worked, and I added this one to the collection. So this is a really cool find. I don't pick up a lot of Game Boy Color games, but when I do find them in the wild, I'll go ahead and snag them. So this was one that I also added as well. And then for the PlayStation 1, this was a game I was going to get way back in like 2021, just never did. Figured I'd go ahead and wait on it. And this is a pretty interesting kind of dungeon crawler style game. It's pretty popular, and I think an installment in this series was released like for the Switch, if I'm not mistaken. But this is Chocobo's Dungeon 2 on the original PlayStation. Pretty decent game here. Again, it's kind of like a dungeon crawler by Squaresoft. Everything about that cover is just so retro and throwback. Was really stoked to add this one as well. They didn't really have an amazing selection at the mom and pop shop today, or at least at that store, so it was kind of slim pickings. But out of everything that I saw, Chocobo made the most sense. They had a lot of games that I already had in my collection, and I didn't want to double dip today. So I just went ahead and added Chocobo's Dungeon 2, another PlayStation 1 edition. So 4 PlayStation games, some really cool stuff that was added there. And then the last but not least game, a game that I didn't think I would have gotten, but I did have to burn the trade credit, and I didn't want to, I don't like just keeping credit. I don't like keeping a tab at retro game stores. Like if I have credit, I want to just burn it right then and there. That's the type of person I am. So I decided to go ahead and burn the last bit of my trade credit on this copy of Pokemon Emerald. So never really gotten too deep into the Pokemon games. I did have 2 copies of Pokemon Fire Red like 4 or 5 years ago, and I used both of those games as trade pieces to basically add different games to the collection. And so I picked this one up because one, again, the pickings were slim at that retro game store. I didn't really have a lot of options for games that, you know, I could have added or picked up. And I didn't want to leave a tab. And 2, this is a game that will definitely make for a very solid trade piece, just because I know a lot of times people are always looking for Pokemon games and stuff. These things like never go out of style. And I know it's getting harder and harder to find legit copies of this game. So definitely wanted to just grab that and add it into the collection for now. I'm gonna park it in the collection. Who knows? I might even play a little bit of it. You know, you never know. I got red, yellow, blue, gold, and now there's green. So we'll see how I feel. I might pop it in and give it a whirl. But this is where all of the, you know, this is what I got for selling about 35% of my PlayStation 4 collection. Like I said in my earlier video, I'm backing out of kind of modern gaming. I'm just backing away from it for now. In my opinion, I have plenty of time to dive into the PlayStation 4 library, the Switch library, the PS5 library. Those libraries are not going anywhere. They're going to be around for years to come. And I really kind of I'm just kind of watching. I'm watching what's happening in the landscape of modern gaming, looking at what's happening in the landscape of pricing for modern games. I know we often talk about the pricing of retro games, but dude, look at what's happening with the pricing of modern games. I mean, we're talking about $80 a pop for games these days, $70 to $80. We're talking consoles that run five, six, seven, $800. I mean, what's going on? It's expensive, and I think video games and the hobby of playing video games at this point is just going to be expensive all around. So it's going to kind of become a thing of like, pick your poison, really. Like, where do you want to blow your cash? Do you want to do it on retro? Do you want to do it on modern? And where do you think you'll have more opportunity down the road? For me, I see a lot of this stuff just becoming more and more scarce. The prices are continuing to rise on certain retro games. Certain retro games we're still seeing a bit of a surge because there is a lot of energy in the hobby. But when I was at the mom and pop shop, I asked the employee, I said, hey, what's selling for you right now? What's selling, what's the fastest moving stuff for you guys? And, he kind of told me, if you want me to be honest, it's Pokemon cards. Like people, he pretty much was like, people don't even really care about games right now. It's all Pokemon cards. And that's really what a lot of mom and pop shops are dealing with. Which kind of tells me that for in large part, like I said, a lot of the hobbyists, the gaming hobbyists that were on the fringe, they've fallen off. Your diehard gamers are still there. Obviously, your collectors are still there, and you're always going to have resellers kind of waiting out there in the wings, kind of pretty much, snapping up anything that's cheap. But I think with a lot of the focus and attention, being on Pokemon cards, with everyone kind of focused on what's happening with Xbox and Nintendo, and then PlayStation 5, now it's still a good time, I think, to build a collection of some staple games. They don't have to be, you don't have to have a collection filled with Pokemon, Emerald level games, but you can still have a really solid collection with games like C12, Wild Number 9, Scalar, Rascal, all cheap but pretty fun games. So let me know what you guys think about the exchange. If you saw my video from earlier, do you think, it was a fair trade? What do you think? Let me know. That does it for me. It's the Y2K Collector. I'll catch you in the next video. Take it easy.